All right. Aside from talking about substations, this is the much more interesting topic to me as a football fan is the draft. This is especially big for the Niners because they're entering a season where, a lot of old players. This is really do or die for John Lynch, I think. And so obviously free agency is first. I'll make a video on that later, but the draft is always a lot more exciting because you get to see new players and really go deep and delve deep into these players. And so I'm going to share the screen with you guys. Let me just quickly share screen layout. So yeah, mock draft season. This is quite this to me. The NFL draft is one of, aside from the season and playoffs, is one of my favorite times of the year. We get to go through prospects, and so and guys that, especially this draft is going to be especially exciting because I think there's so many needs, that so many ways the Niners can go, that any position that we pick, there's going to be a side to where, okay, we need this player, right? If the Niners go wide receiver, okay, wouldn't be my choice in the first round, but hell, we need wide receiver. If the Niners go defensive end, it actually would be my choice, and I'll explain that later. But if the Niners go defensive end, then that will be good. If the Niners go even tight end, and I'll get into my Kenyon Sadiq obsession, but even tight end, that would be a good pick. Tackle, guard, that would be a good pick. Linebacker, I could see that. Now, we're not going to be covering linebacker and safety today, but I'll, in future videos, be covering that as well. So let's get straight into it. I'm sorry, we're 3 minutes through this video, and I haven't even gotten into the analysis. So first thing I'm going to start off here, where should we start? Because this is kind of a loaded video. But first thing I'm going to start off with here is, let's just go through the mock draft. So, as much as I would like the Niners to have a chance at David Bailey, Reuben Bain, that's not even Caleb Downs. That's not going to happen. Those are all blue chip players. But I'll make this my first note. And my first note being the Niners, and I just touched on this earlier, defensive line, I would want them to go here. We have the 27th pick. I don't even think we'd have to trade up that many spots to get a player that I really like, defensive ends that I really like. But the defensive end position, the reason why I would like the Niners to go here in round 1 isn't because it's our biggest need, but it is the deepest position. Well, okay, receiver's really deep, but it's a position that I've been getting into, and it's one of the first positions that I've been covering. But as I look at it, it's a very deep position this year for the draft. It is stacked. Because if you look down here at the list, I'm going to touch deeply on Akeem Mesidor today, but he is the 6th. If you look at this round 1 mock draft, right? Simulation by PFF, you have David Bailey, Reuben Bain, Cassius Howe, that's 3, Keldrick Folk, that's 4, 5 being TJ Parker, and then if the Niners were to draft Akeem Mesidor, he is 6, right? So there are 6 guys. He is 6th deep, Akeem Mesidor from Miami, edge from Miami. He is the 6th guy deep in this draft, at the edge position. And he's a guy that I'm looking at, and I'm just like, let me just quickly look at my notes here. But he's a guy that I'm looking at, and I'm like, hold on. He can play any scheme. He fits what Raheem Morris brings. If he changes anything, like if Raheem Morris changes to, and I don't think he will, but Akeem Mesidor can play in the wide 9. as a pass rusher. If Raheem Morris brings in more of a 3-4 scheme, he can play a edge rusher. I mean, I don't want to compare him to Micah Parsons because that's very rich. I mean, it's not very rich, but you don't want to compare anyone to a future Hall of Famer. But if you put him in the 3-4 scheme, he can roam around as a 2-point stance type of defensive end. He can drop back into coverage because he's so athletic, Akeem Mesidor. He's so athletic. He's undersized, I will say, for a defensive end who rushes the passer. He's undersized. He's, 6'3", 280 pounds. His 40 4'9", which we'll see with the combine. And this is also pre-combine, so a lot of these players could rise. But, he's a guy who can fit any scheme, really. He's a very versatile player. But my point with drafting a defensive end, it's a very deep draft. And if you don't want to be the team coming out of this draft, if 5 of these guys, and if this draft becomes a draft where 6 or 7 of these guys are really good, if 6 or 7 of these guys are really good and you do not draft a defensive end in the first round, you don't want to be the team that doesn't take a defensive end in a loaded class, and then all of these defensive ends become very good. And also you just look historically, and defensive ends, well, actually drafts that are super deep at a position, like, okay, 6 or 7 guys could go in the first round at this position. Usually that is a very, like, if a position is very stacked and it's 6 or 7 guys deep in the first round, a lot of times if you look historically, most of those guys that are taken at that position are going to be successful, because historically, if it's a very deep draft, even if you get the guy that is 5th or 6th deep at the position in that draft, you're probably going to end up with a really elite guy. And so I wouldn't mind. Yeah, he's the 6th defensive end going off the board, but he is incredible. Let's look a little bit more into his scouting report. Now, this guy, I mean, like I said, speed around the edge, has, elite bend. Very versatile, elite bend. His first step is really incredible, is what I've seen from him, his first step. Then he has really great hands. And then obviously, like I said, great bend to where he's so athletic where the defensive end tries to get a hand on him, but can move in any which way to where he's very hard to control. He's very hard to I guess, keep at bay, because he can bend any which way. He can use his speed. And so he's very hard to just get hands on as an offensive lineman and stop as an offensive lineman. And then you look at the scouting report, demonstrates excellent hand usage and leverage, high motor player who pursues plays relentlessly. That's good for the Niners scheme. Often makes tackles downfield. And you saw that. I mean, as I was watching his highlights, he was incredible, like just blowing up plays against the run where, the running back would be 4 yards behind the line of scrimmage and he was already back there. Just, there'd be plays where it's just like, oh my gosh, he destroyed this entire play because he got into the backfield so fast and he couldn't be blocked. And obviously he had the help of the other Miami defensive end, Ruben Bain. But if he goes to the Niners, he's hopefully going to have the help of Nick Bosa. So, man, he almost has the play style of a Micah Parsons. Now, he might not become that, but the one weakness, injury history, is a concern. He missed most of the 2023 season, but he's played 2 seasons since. And it was an undisclosed injury, so he's played 2 seasons since. Slightly undersized, like I said earlier. So this is that's the thing. It's like, okay, if you look at his weakness, right? Quickly again, slightly undersized. Injury a concern, but that was 2 years ago. Can occasionally get washed out of plays when facing larger, more powerful offensive linemen. Okay. And then needs to develop a more diverse array of pass rush moves. But that coming out of college, like I've been scouting players enough to see that's a lot of times a critique of defensive ends out of college. They need to develop more pass rush moves. But what a better place than Chris Kasarik and the Niners defensive line coach to develop him, right? And so if those are really his concerns and critiques of him coming out of college, I mean, I feel really good that this guy is going to be a very good player because those aren't crazy weaknesses. You can overlook those. It's not like he has off the field issues, right? And if we're quickly going off of, I have his stats pulled up here, just before I move on to the next player, because you've seen me rant enough about Hakeem Mesidor. But before I move on to the next player, I just want to quickly bring up his stats. 2025, he had 12 and a half sacks, 4 forced fumbles, played most of the snaps, right? And obviously was a part of a great Miami defense. 5.5 sacks the year before. So not great production the year before, but really you have to look no further than his senior year. And then obviously his career began at West Virginia. He transferred to Miami in his junior season, but first 2 years he was productive in his first 2 years at West Virginia, having 7 sacks in 2022, 4.5 sacks in 2021. And then if you look quickly here, he was freshman All-American, teams, all Big 12 second team honors in his sophomore year with West Virginia. So, I mean, years of production, relative production. So yeah, I mean, that's the first guy. And then obviously I literally, this is probably going to be the guy that I spend the most time on, Hakeem Mesidor. Okay, so let's go to our next guy. And this is, I'm basically laying out today the routes that the Niners could go here. Caden Proctor. So that's another guy. If you look at this mock, right, Caden Proctor is going 23 to the Eagles. He's a tackle from Alabama. And I don't think we're going to go O-line here, but we could go trench. I think there's a very good chance we go trenches. I would say an 80% chance we go trenches, defensive, offensive line. And he's a guy, the reason why I kind of pointed to him that I was looking up, and I'll get into more of these offensive line prospects as we go along. So I could, because Loane, I think going to Penn State guard is another guy that I've heard that could go to the Niners. But Caden Proctor was a guy that I heard everyone talking about potentially going to the Niners. So of course I looked him up as my first offensive line prospect. Going to that could go to the Niners, and he's going pick number 23 in this simulation. But in the last simulation I did, the 49ers could have picked him. So he's around that area. And he's a guy that a lot of people were saying could start at left guard, which is a big Niners need. And then once Trent Williams retires, hopefully not this year, he kicks out to left tackle. Now, the Niners haven't traditionally done that. And this is where I think this guy is. I think Hakeem Mesidor is a guy we most likely could draft. And Caden Proctor, granted that he doesn't rise tremendously, but Caden Proctor is a guy that we could least draft. I think out of the offensive line, he's very good, but I don't think traditionally the Niners, especially if Trent Williams is around for this season, traditionally the Niners don't draft, a guy to play left guard and then kick him to left tackle. I just don't think they would do that. I will say with him, though, despite he played through a torn labrum in his 2025 campaign. He started 12 games, and he started 12 games dealing with a torn labrum and earned first-team All-SEC honors. So tough as nails, Caden Proctor would be. And I mean, he's very good, very, very elite. I mean, athletic as hell. Very good size. Athletic is all I can say. And I mean, in the zone run blocking scheme, you've got just a bruiser who is very big, but very athletic for his size. So that's a guy I could see going to the Niners, although I don't think it's going to happen. Now, another guy that I kind of want to touch on a little bit, Kenyon Sadiq. I don't even know why. I should have made videos on all these players, but Kenyon Sadiq really, really, I mean, this is probably my second likely player. He was mocked to the 49ers by PFF, their podcast. And Kenyon Sadiq, I can't say enough about him. I mean, I was watching some of his highlights before coming to this video. Very good man in man-to-man. He's wide open, I mean, all the time. And yes, that might be because Oregon schemed him open, but that's also because he's just a very good route runner. And it also seems like something Kyle Shanahan would do. And realistically, you look at it, right? George Kittle's not coming back next year. Okay. And you need a guy a playmaker, a difference maker on offense. You know, Ricky Pearsall isn't that guy yet. You don't know if he's going to become that guy. And this guy, another thing is one of the big critiques against him is he struggles to run block consistently. This guy can play in the slot. He is a very versatile player. And so you can play him in the slot. You can obviously play him at traditional tight end position, Kenyon Sadiq. And he's very good route runner, great speed. And I mean, you watch these Oregon highlights, he bounces off of tackles. He's tough as nails. And you even see what Oregon was doing with him. They were giving him screens. Go and look at the Oregon highlights. They were using him like the Niners used Deebo Samuel. This is Kyle's wet dream, is Kenyon Sadiq. Because if Deebo Samuel made the 49ers offense run at his prime, and this guy reminds me a lot of how they use Kenyon Sadiq, a lot of how the Niners used Deebo Samuel. Run after the catch, screens in space, over the middle, takes 3 hits, very athletic. So, I mean, I would love this pick. When I initially saw him getting mocked there, I was like, a tight end going in the first round. But then I looked at his highlights. I was like, yeah, this is a Kyle guy. And obviously it all depends on the in-person meetings as well. So I'm not even going to go over I'll go over his stats later. Well, and I mean, really quickly, we can go in his production, right? I mean, was big time. And that's another big thing is 2024 was big in the Big Ten championship, was big time in the Big Ten championship. He's always produced. He had huge games in the Big Ten championship where in 2024 we had 2 touchdowns. So in the biggest stages, he's produced. And then 2025 was his big year when he became the full-time starter, 51 receptions for 560 yards and 8 touchdowns, leading all FBS tight ends and scoring catches. He was a big time red zone target, red zone threat, which would open the repertoire of the 49ers, would open up. If you got him, you could open up Chris McCaffrey in the red zone. You'd have Kenyon Sadiq, who's very good in the red zone. So transformed his body. He was a guy who kind of came in because he transformed his body in one season, this offseason. So he's a very raw guy, but man, he clocks a 4.55 is his 40 time, 93rd percentile for tight ends, 6'3" height, 4.5 for a 245 pound player, very compact, just his play style reminds me of a younger Deebo Samuel. So yeah, I mean, he's another guy. You look at his scouting report, and he is not a lot of weaknesses that concern me. Okay, so if we're going, so those are kind of the three guys that I really wanted to point out. To quickly recap, Kenyon Sadiq, Akeem Mesidor, and Caden Proctor. Now, as you guys see, there's still Caleb Lomu here. There's still, even Christian Miller I could see us getting. Brandon Sis. I mean, there's so many guys. Loane, CJ Allen, TJ Parker is a guy who in the last live I did he's great as well. Honestly, looking at Mesidor and TJ Parker, who would I rather? It's really who would the defensive coordinator for the 49ers, the recent defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris for the 49ers, prefer? Who would he prefer? And if I look at the play styles, if you're comparing, right, if you're comparing TJ Parker and Akeem Mesidor, if you look at the play styles, don't forget, Raheem Morris drafted the two Atlanta Falcons defensive ends last year, and they were both speed defensive ends. They were both 3-4 linebackers who rushed from a 2-point stance, were very athletic, more linebacker 3-4 type defensive ends. And so who does Raheem Morris prefer? And if I look at the play style of Hakeem Mesidor, who is more of a speed 3-4 defensive end, or TJ Parker, who is more, who would I prefer? TJ Parker, because he has a year. Akeem Mesidor, if you look at it, he broke out really this year, had a huge year this year. TJ Parker had years and years and years of great production. Actually, this year he kind of fell off. But that whole Clemson team did. So, but who would Raheem Morris prefer? I think it's Akeem Mesidor. And you pair him in that defensive line, and man, you've got, I think defensive end, a guy like Mesidor, very much missing on the Niners. So, yeah, a lot of guys that I still need to go over, but those are the three, and then obviously TJ Parker, 4 that we could go over. But I think this is a year that the Niners go bold, that Shanahan gets his guy. I'm going to draft Kenyon Sadiq with this pick. So yeah. We'll see. It's going to be very interesting. I think that's Shanahan's just wet dream now. Because it's like, okay, no George Kittle who you pair Kenyon Sadiq with, let's say, Alec Pierce, who we could sign in free agency, and then Ricky Pearsall, and that becomes an elite trio. And then Christian McCaffrey, elite trio.